Satoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravir Magedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. So this morning we will focus on the Jnana Yoga practice. For those of you who have been attending from the last 2 days, to briefly summarize, we began with understanding of what knowledge is, how knowledge occurs, the different kinds of knowledge, direct and indirect, inner and outer. Then we also saw what is ignorance, that it's not simply the absence of knowledge, but it has a very mysterious nature. Mysterious in the sense of inexpressible. You cannot say it is there, you cannot say it is not there. And in order to understand what that mysterious nature of ignorance is, we saw the classical example of the rope and snake. A rope mistaken in a semi-darkness to be a snake. And we saw in that time the two powers of ignorance, that ignorance hides the reality and in its place projects a pseudo-reality. So the snake that is seen in the rope, is that snake real or unreal? That's not a very easy question to answer. If we say, is the snake there or not there? Because if you say the snake is there, we really know it's not. It's really, there's just a rope. So you cannot say the snake is there. On the other hand, you cannot say the snake is not there. Because if it is not there, how did I see it? And so that is why it's called a mysterious, because you cannot say it is there, you cannot say it is not there. You cannot say it is there as well as not there. You cannot say it is not there and it is not there. So pretty much you cannot say anything about it. And that's why it's called mysterious. And we also saw then that the way to remove this ignorance is discernment, viveka. And discernment means looking deeply. If we look deeply, look carefully, then we might discover the reality. We might discover that there is not really the snake there, but actually a rope. So this was the basic theoretical framework of Jnana Yoga that we saw in the last 2 days. So this morning our primary focus will be on practice. Now, for practice, one of the first things that gets discussed in Vedanta is fitness. And one who is fit for a particular practice is called an adhikari. So, one thing that we have to remember is this, that Jnana Yoga does not have to make sense for everyone. It doesn't have to be, everyone doesn't have to feel attracted to Jnana Yoga. Because, thankfully, there are at least 3 more yogas. So, if Jnana Yoga doesn't make sense to you, or if you don't feel attracted to it, that's okay, because it's not meant. No path is meant for everyone, and that's why there are many paths, and that's why Ramakrishna taught that each of these paths is a valid way to reach the divine. So one thing that we have to recognize is all of us don't have to feel a kind of an obligation that somehow this Jnana Yoga should make sense to me or should be my path. So how do we know then whether this is the path for me? The first requirement to gauge whether we are right for Dhyana Yoga is whether we have interest in Dhyana Yoga. Now, those of you who are coming for this retreat, it would be a little bit naive to assume that you have come to this retreat only because of your specific interest on Dhyana Yoga. But sometimes many of you have been coming regularly to the programs here. And then when there are visiting Swamis, no matter what topic they speak on, you like to hear it because you know some of it at least might be helpful. So I'm not assuming that all of you have come here specifically to hear about Dhyana Yoga. But at least some of you have a special interest among the different yogas in Dhyana Yoga. So that's the first requirement. But usually, interest is all not enough. We also need a sufficient aptitude. And we saw that the basic practice in Dhyana Yoga is discernment or viveka. And the requirement for viveka we saw yesterday was that we must be unprejudiced, that we must be able to carefully examine everything, and we must be fearless in questioning. Now, in addition to that, if you add clarity of mind, now clarity of mind comes through inner discipline, it comes through leading an ethical life. Because if we make many compromises in life, it does compromise also the clarity of our mind. And therefore someone who can lead a life based on certain principles, certain values, it is easier for such a person to have a clear head, to see things clearly. And if we see things clearly, chances are that the choices we make and the decisions that we take will be generally the right choices or the right decisions. We might still make mistakes, but we might make fewer mistakes than someone who doesn't have that clarity. And a third requirement, of course, is longing. Sometimes people have interest in things, they have the right aptitude for it, they have the talent for it, but there's no great longing for it, there's no great urgency for it. And longing is very important. How quickly we will make progress in spiritual life, how quickly we will attain the goal of our life will depend on how badly we want it. The Ramakrishna used to say that people shed so many tears for so many things, but who really wants to weep for God? And he said, if we can truly weep for God, then we can realize God. You really don't need to do any spiritual practice. Unfortunately, weeping can't be done artificially. Sometimes some people who are good actors can pretend, but tears, either they come or they don't come. I remember, I think in Swami Sharadananda's book, that Leela Prasanga, the great Ramakrishna, the great master, I think in one place he says, and I don't remember the exact thing, but he said that if we weep for things of this world, then tears come from one end of the eye. I think the outer or inner. Inner. And then if you weep for God, then your tears come from the outer edge. One place, Swami Sharadanandaji mentions that, and I remember years ago when I was in Madras, one of the devotees, she said that she was meditating and suddenly tears started coming. She just got up and went to the mirror to see which direction the tears were coming from. So again, so longing, the intensity of longing, in Vedanta texts say, in Sanskrit they say, Deepta Shira Jalarashim Iva. So what would we say like, that's the height of longing. And he says, if someone's head is on fire, the longing with which that person would go to see for water to put out that fire That is, if we have that kind of longing, we can realize God right now, right this very minute. If someone's head is on fire, you say, why don't you have a cup of tea before you go for water? They said, no, I don't want anything. What I want is water. Do we really want God with that intensity? In any case, depending on the intensity of our longing, the progress will occur. And so sometimes if we feel a little upset, it's like, oh, I've been practicing for so long and nothing seems to be happening, and just find out whether how intensely you want it. Swami Akhandananda ji, another great disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, used to say that the law of life is such that if you want something, if you want it really badly, just like that's all that you want, you will get it. That's the law of life. It may not come to you according to your timetable, but sooner or later, if you want something, it will come to you. If you have patience enough, but you really must want it very badly. So that's the first thing. If you want something, you will get it. And the second thing he said was, if you don't want anything, you will get everything. The second part is tough. It's not just about saying, I don't want anything. Deep down, if anyone can say, I really don't expect anything from anyone, I don't want anything from anyone, then he said, you get everything. But the second part is tough. But even for a spiritual seeker, even if you don't say, I don't want anything, if you say, I want to realize God, and that's all that I want, and I just want it very urgently, depending on the intensity of that want, the quickness with which you will get the result will depend. So the three basic practices in Dhyana Yoga are unknown to many of you who have read these books, called Shravana, Manana and Nididhyasana. Shravana means hearing, Manana is reflection, Nididhyasana is usually translated as meditation. Now, if the problem is that we have forgotten who we are, that I am the Atman, I am the divine being, and I mistakenly start seeing myself as a divine being, then all that needs to be done is someone needs to tell me what I have forgotten. And when someone tells me what I have forgotten, knowledge should come. Now, it does indeed come. So, if I have the aptitude for this yoga, I am the fittest student for this yoga, if I have the intense longing to realize God, all that needs to happen is I go to a teacher, the teacher looks at me and says, Tattvamasi, you are that infinite being. And as soon as I hear those words of the teacher, this knowledge, this enlightenment occurs within my heart. Aham Brahmasmi, I am the infinite one. Problem is solved, no more practice needed. That's it. Now, it happens to the highest category of students. Now, if you hear it once, and those of us who have been reading Swamiji's books have been like hearing it again and again, you are the infinite one, you are the Atman, you are the spirit, and if you find, well, still nothing has happened, that means at least one thing is certain. One realization is, I am not the highest category, I don't belong to the highest category of student. There is a story about one young man who used to go to a teacher and said, please teach me. And the teacher gave him a practice, and the student started practicing. Then after a while, he started getting very impatient. And he said, I've been practicing now for 6 months and there is no realization yet. Please give me realization. And the teacher said, keep on practicing, it will come. And the student said, no, I want to realize. Then the teacher said, okay, since you are so impatient for realization, are you willing to do what I ask you to do? And he said, yes, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. And the teacher said, next time it rains, you should go out in the middle of the street, take off your shirt and stand with one hand raised for half an hour in the rain. And this student was like, it's a very strange kind of a practice. But he had promised it, so he said, yeah, I'll do it. If that's what is needed for a realization, I'll do it. And so next time it starts raining heavily, just a regular rain, not like what's happening in Texas right now. So he just goes out into the middle of the street, takes off his shirt, raises his hand and stands there for half an hour. And then after that he goes back to the teacher to report to him what happened. And the teacher said, okay, tell me what happened. And then the student said, well, I did exactly what you asked me to do. And the teacher said, well, how did you feel? And the student said, well, look, left to myself, I would never have done such a stupid thing. But you asked me to do it, that's why I did it. Everyone walking on the street was just looking at me, and I just felt like a total fool. And then the teacher said, well, that's the first good realization to start with. So first thing, if you have heard, and then we already heard several times during this retreat, that we are the Atman. After hearing it, if we have not become enlightened yet, our first realization is we don't belong to that Uttama Adhikari, the highest category of student. Now what we do? We have now heard the truth, Shravana has been done, and if still enlightenment hasn't occurred, then we need to do manana. We need to keep on reflecting on that truth. Now the reason enlightenment doesn't occur after hearing is because there is one big obstacle. And that obstacle is called asambhavana. Asambhavana means questions and doubts keep on coming in the mind. Because it's easy for the books to say, oh, you are not this human being, you are the divine being, you are the infinite one. And we say, how is that even possible? We read the book saying, oh, this world is not really there. Only God is really there. This is only an appearance. And we say, like, how can this be an appearance? This is so real. I can feel it. So these kind of questions and doubts that come in the mind are the obstacles, which is why immediately after hearing I don't become enlightened. And therefore then I need to keep on reflecting. What exactly is meant by something being real? Why is it that I may think of myself as a human being, but that may not be real? That again, then we go through our mind that example of the rope and snake. That it's possible for me to see a snake there, and yet the snake may not be there. It's possible for something to be a rope and for me to mistake it to be a snake. So if it's possible for me to mistake a rope for a snake, it's equally possible for me to mistake the divine being for a human being. It's equally possible for me to mistake the Atman for the body and mind. So it's through this kind of reflection, then some category of student, they call Madhyama Adhikari, the moderately gifted student, after reflection will become enlightened. So then we can see now, those of us who have read this, heard this, and over the years have done reflection, and after reflection also we find, well, no enlightenment yet. Then we can be still more humble and say, well, we are not even moderately gifted. Then there is this third category of students called Kanishta Adhikari, the least gifted, the below average students, that even after reflection they don't become enlightened. Then they have to then really meditate deeply on it. The reason we don't find enlightenment even after reflection is that there is an even greater obstacle. And that obstacle in Sanskrit is called, let me get that Sanskrit word. Viparita Bhavana. That's right. So, not just that asambhavana, not just doubts and questions, but contrary experience continues to be felt within our heart. That no matter how often I hear that I am the infinite spirit, But you say, well, but I still feel like a finite mortal human being. No matter how often I hear that the world may not be as real as it seems, but I see, well, it's very real. So my experience is in direct contrast to what is being described in books. So this viparita bhavana that we experience is to be removed only by deeply meditating on the truth. So these are the three basic practices. Now, although they might seem like three different things, they and might seem as if they are to be done in a chronological order, but we find that unless one becomes enlightened only after hearing or after manana, eventually all these three practices become combined, in which we have to keep on hearing the truth again and again and again, and that's often occurs through the constant parayana that we do, constant study that is required. We need to keep on reflecting on it day after day after day, and need to keep on meditating on it. And the reason these three practices kind of combine into one, because all of these three practices require the basic practice of thinking. It's the mental activity that's important here. Now, thinking is among the most underrated power that we human beings have. The reason is that while our appearance is seen by people around us, no one knows what is going on inside our heads. So our thoughts are very private. And just as at home, no matter how your garage or your basement looks, people don't worry so much about keeping the garage or the basement in order, because it's like, well, that's not, people are not going to see it. So usually if guests come at home, the rooms in which you welcome visitors, people usually take care to make that room presentable. And the other rooms where no one is going to come, you really don't bother about it. That same mentality carries over in our lives as well, because all that people see is that how our appearance is. People see, and then we to judge other people by their appearance, by the clothes that they wear, the way they move, and so on, because we don't know what's going on inside their heads. And so much of our time and energy is spent on external appearance and not enough on what is going on inside. But our personality is shaped not so much by what kind of clothes we wear or what our external appearance is, but what is going on within us. What we think and how we think determines who we really are. But the kind of contemporary culture and society in which we live, there is a lot of emphasis given on appearance. But what we need to focus, especially as spiritual seekers, is how we look inside, the inner beauty. The inner beauty is more important than external beauty. In fact, if the mind is clear and pure and beautiful, that will show itself externally. They say about Socrates, the great Greek philosopher, his physical appearance wasn't what we, by today's standards, might say a very handsome person. In fact, they say was pretty, what today we might describe as a very ugly features. But his mind was so clear, his ideas were so noble and lofty, and that because of that inner beauty, he had a great following. He was a big celebrity during of his day. So we know that life is not just about being beautiful externally. What is more important is being beautiful internally. And that's why if we see that Jnana Yoga is our primary practice, in fact really any yoga, we have to pay special attention to what we think, how we think. So inner beauty is very vital. Now, about thinking about inner thinking, one of the practices that Sri Ramakrishna emphasized a lot was what today we might describe as authenticity. In Bengali there is a phrase, they say mon mukh ek kora, and literally translated means making the speech and the mind one. And what it means in more simpler terms would be bringing about a harmony between our mind, our words and our actions. A lot of the stress that we experience in life, we may not realize this. Oftentimes we attribute the stress in our life to external situations, the workplace, the people we work with, being causes of stress, and oftentimes they are. But there is an inner thing that is happening which actually contributes a lot to the stress that we experience. And that inner thing is the divergence between what we think, what we say, and what we do. Oftentimes, what we think and what we say may be totally disconnected. If you don't like something, you might say this is terrible, but you know that's not the very politically right thing to say. And so while your mind is thinking it's terrible, if someone asks you how it is, oh, this is so great, this is awesome. So there's already a divergence between what I think and what I say. And then oftentimes what I say and what I do, sometimes I say, yes, I'll be there tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And then the next day I'm doing something else at that time. So this way of separating out our thoughts, words and actions actually is a major cause of stress in our life. And to the extent we can bring all these three together, that if I think something, my word should not contradict it. Now that doesn't mean, there's one other thing, because this could be easily misunderstood. That if you think something is awful, you say, well, I think it's awful, so I must say it's awful. No, you don't have to say it. But you don't have to say, oh, this is wonderful either. And you can keep quiet. And you can say something in a more gentle. There is a Sanskrit saying that Satyam vada, priyam vada, ma vada satyam apriyam. Satyam vada, be always truthful. Priyam vada, speak very pleasantly. But ma vada satyam apriyam, no need to speak an unpleasant truth. That doesn't mean you have to lie. But if it is very unpleasant, well, you can choose to keep quiet. You can choose to change the subject. You can choose to do a lot of other things. But so it's not that you're not being asked to lie for it, but to be honest to yourself. At the night when you go to sleep, your heart should be completely free. You should feel, I have been an honest person. Honesty is not just about, oh, I don't cheat anyone. Of course, most of us are good people. We don't cheat other people. But a lot of times we cheat our own selves. We cheat ourselves by this divergence between our thoughts, our words and our actions. So this inner honesty is equally important. Yet another principle about thinking is how we see others is directly related to how we see ourselves. Sometimes we know, we kind of hear this all the time, those of us who have learned to look upon God as our father or as our mother. Well, if God is our father or mother, then and everyone are God's children. But do we, when we meet people and when we deal with people in life, do I always have to remember, here is all the children of God. He is a child of God with whom I speak. We don't always remember that. But we are effortlessly able to look upon everyone as human beings. Why is it that I don't need to look at study books and say, who are these people? Oh, they are human beings. I don't have to do that. Why is it I'm able to see everyone effortlessly as human being? Because I'm able to see myself effortlessly as a human being. So because I know I'm a human being, I automatically know these are human beings. But if I'm not able to see myself that I'm a child of God, if that doesn't become my primary identity, it will not be easy for me to see others as children of God. If I see myself that I am a servant of God, then I see everyone. Oh, these are all servants of God. If I see myself as I am the Atman, I am the Spirit, then I see everyone as the Atman or Spirit. So when, even in Karma Yoga, when we are said, oh, help others by seeing God in them, that's great, but you cannot see God in others unless and until you are able to see God in your own heart. So oftentimes say charity begins at home. Really, everything begins at home. So how I see myself will determine how I see the world. And that's why so much of the change that needs to occur has to occur within us. But how much are we going to change the world? The world is just too big. And therefore, changing the world is an impossible task. That's the Swami Vivekananda referred to the world as a dog's tail. The essential nature of the world has not changed. You look up, you read history, goes several centuries back, you find the same jealousy, hatred, anger, wars were present then, they are present today. But there was also friendship, love, understanding. That was also present then, is also present today. So things haven't changed. And as I probably have already mentioned this, that in a manuscript they found in about 2,500 years ago in Egypt, one of the shreds of the manuscript they found when they deciphered it, what it said was, what has happened to this new generation now? During our days the things were very different. So this they said it more than 2,000 years ago, and you probably have heard it from your parents and grandparents as well. So basically the world has not changed much. But the world can change for us. If we change, the world will change for us. Even when Sri Ramakrishna worshipped in the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar, there were other people, there was temple staff, there were a lot of people used to come there. And they saw, and today when we visit the place, well, we also see that Kali temple, we feel uplifted. There's Ramakrishna's room and the place he worshipped, we feel. But we don't really see what he saw. The image of Bhavatarini Kali is the same image that Sri Ramakrishna worshipped. But when he looked at that image, he saw a living, breathing, divine mother. Today when we see, well, we still see the image, we feel uplifted, but we don't see the divine mother. So what happened? Who is seeing the reality? Well, we can say, well, what the majority sees is the right thing, then probably we are seeing the right mother, and Ramakrishna was just imagining. Or it's possible that he saw the truth, and the rest of us are not able to see it. Now he was able to see the living, divine, shining, effulgent mother, because he had seen that shining, effulgent truth in his own heart. And because he saw it here, he was able to see it there. That is why, again, they say what is there in microcosm is what you see in the macrocosm. In Bengali, they say Ja ache bhande, che ache brahmande. So what you see here, you see outside. And so that's why there's a great stress, great emphasis given on cleaning up the inside, because what we see outside is directly related to who we are inside. One other thing that I also mentioned, I think earlier, was about seeing the world. Years ago, when I was editing the Vedanta Kesari, and one of the editorials I had written was title of a section from Shakespeare, "All the World's a Stage," and it occurred to me that if Shakespeare were to be living today and revise his works, he might want to change that, and he might probably say something like, "All the world's a 3D movie." And many of us watch movies, and now with this new craze of 3D movies, people are willing to go and even pay extra to see 3D movies. But think about it this way, right from the time we are born, you're already seeing a completely free 3D movie right in front of us. This whole world around us is a free 3D movie. And this is, in a sense, much more interesting than any of the other movies. But we are not able to enjoy it. We are not able to enjoy it because we have become a part of it. That's the problem. It's a little bit like, we know when you go to watch a movie, and if the movie is well made, then it has this capacity to kind of suck you in. You become a part of the story. You forget that you are watching a movie. You just get into it. I remember I wonder if any of you saw a few years ago, there was a movie titled Into Great Silence. Any of you seen that? So, well, this is a little bit out of the subject, but I can share with you. So that's a very unusual movie. There's this young movie maker, and he once visited a monastery. It's in France, on some hilly area. I forget the geographical location of it. But there was this monastery. I think it's one of the Christian monasteries there, and they don't allow visitors. I think once a year probably visitors can go. So this young filmmaker went there and they saw the life of the monks, and he was so impressed that they live in total silence there. Not a word is spoken, and they live truly holy lives in prayer and contemplation. And so he was so eager, and so he thought, why don't I film this so that then I can come and show it to others and let them know that, because most people, how many of us even knew such a place existed? So he went to the head of the monastery and said, could I film this thing? And then the chief monk there, he said, we are not ready yet for this. And so this person took it as a kind of a very polite way of saying no. And so he gave up, and he returned. And he said something more than 10 or 15 years later, probably 15 years later, he got a phone call from that monastery saying, now we are ready. And so they then told him that he could come if he wanted to film. They gave him a condition that he cannot bring his whole film crew or anything. He cannot bring no lights, it's just in the natural light. He can bring his own camera. Other than that, nothing. No other person. He could film it. No one will speak with him. But they gave him freedom that you could stand and film whatever you want to do. And he was very grateful. He went and stayed there almost like 6 or 9 months. And they never spoke. People there never spoke. So he was just kind of quietly, he said, just some corner, he'll stand and I'll be just filming. And afterwards he made this movie. And then towards the end of the movie, you just find, I think they have in that monastery just half an hour in every week. That was the time these monks then get together and then kind of they take a short walk outside. That is the only time they may have some conversation. Half an hour in a week. That doesn't mean there is no sound there at all. They do go to their chapel and they say their prayers. The prayers are said aloud. So there is a sound of the bell, there are the prayers, but no conversation. Anyway, so this is the film. It's beautifully filmed. It's almost like an artistic work, but it's total silence. So when I went to see that film with a few friends, I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know too much about what this film is about. And so these people then they brought me this, just as most people do. I was sitting, they said, "Oh, so Swamiji, you can have this popcorn." So there's one big popcorn bag in my hand, and we're just watching. And then movie starts, and it's total silence. And I just took this one popcorn, and I said, "No, it's not going to work." So I sat with the whole movie with this popcorn thing without being able to eat anything, because there was no sound. It's like complete silence. But the beauty, and then I mean, there isn't like there is some big plot or a big gripping story or editing or anything like that. So I think a lot of people probably might get bored by it. But what this person has done is just like being a fly on the wall, just with a camera. So here is this monk who now walks slowly and sits in prayer for the next 10 minutes. So this camera is there. All that you see is this one person in silent prayer. And that's it. Nothing you have to do. You just sit there. And so, I mean, what choice do you have? What else will you do? Well, if that person is praying, well, let me pray too. So, in the beginning, it's kind of because we are not used to seeing movies like this. But in the beginning, you feel a little uneasy. But the beauty is, it's been filmed so well and the colors are so great that after about 15-20 minutes, you just you feel like you are in there. You feel you're in the monastery itself. Now, I just mention all this to show that well-made movies have this capacity to kind of make you forget. I mean, after some time, I even forgot I was holding that popcorn thing in my hand. I was just like, it has completely become part of it. So, good movies can do that. Now, who will enjoy a movie more? The one who is a part of it or the one who is observing it? The actors who act in movies. If you are in the movie, I mean, there is well, you could say, well, there is a joy of acting itself. But who is a good actor? A good actor is one who we might say, will completely forget his or her own identity and become one with the identity of the character that actor is playing. Now, if that actor is playing suppose maybe this actor who is in real life maybe a millionaire, and if that actor now is for some time playing the role of a homeless person who is going to suffer like hell, and he's a good actor, so he has forgotten now that his real identity and now doing the role and become one with that identity. So now all the pain and suffering and privations of that character become the privations and suffering of the actor, because the actor has become one with that character. And at least at the end of the day, maybe that actor can go and just wipe off his makeup and get back his identity. But what if this play is going to go on and on and on endlessly? Then, well, you have lost your original identity, and you will never be going to be able to enjoy the movie as a whole, because now your whole personality has got centered into that one character. Now, at some point, as long as you're a good actor, well, people would want to see you. You might get an Oscar, and more. You'll make. No one is going to. You'll continue acting. Now, what if someone is a bad actor? Now, who would be a bad actor? A bad actor is one who can never forget his or her true identity. So if that actor is a very wealthy person, who's doing the role of a penniless person, but still acts like I am very wealthy and rich. But that would be very bad acting. Bad acting, people are not going to appreciate it. This person cannot do justice to that role. and then probably will be kicked out from that production, and then they'll get some another good actor to do it. But when this person is thrown out, this person has then the freedom to just go and sit in the audience and watch the movie, which this person couldn't do before. Now I mention all this to show that this big cosmic play that's going on, and it's really a well-made movie. If the producer-director is God himself, then of course it's going to be a well-made movie. And we have become now the role that we are playing is whatever you see as your present identity, you are a character in this big drama that God has created. And we, have being good actors, have completely immersed ourselves into these roles. While our real identity is we are the infinite Atman, but we are just good actors. Now the first thing therefore we have to do is become a bad actor. But becoming a bad actor means you cannot do justice to your role as a human being. You keep on remembering again and again, I'm divine, I'm the infinite one, I'm immortal. How can I just do stuff like these mortal, human, samsari jantus? In fact, that's the word used in the Upanishads. It speaks to human beings as insects. Yeah, so they say, it's a little bit like this. We think about this. Inside the human body, we know that there are good bacteria, right? In our intestines, etc., whose presence is necessary in our body for them for digestion and all those processes. Now, do you think those bacteria, those good bacteria within our body, are even aware that they are in someone else's intestines and doing the job for someone? No. They have their own little world and they think like, wow, this is it. They are doing their own yoga there, whatever. But really, they are serving someone else. This big being that I am, and all these tiny little creatures are just insects or the jantus who are working for me really. Exactly in the same way, here it is, Virat Purusha, the cosmic being. And we are just bacteria. We're just like small little things. We think that this is my life and every one of us got our own bloated egos and our own little world. But we are really serving some big, larger function of some other bigger celestial beings. That's why the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says that we have to be a little bit humble. That we are, in the eyes of these celestial gods, we are just like small little insects, nothing more than that. And the way to get out of that identity is to become bad actors. And being a bad actor means stop seeing your present identity as your real identity. This is only a drama. So we are not human beings trying to become divine. We are divine beings playing the role of a human being. As long as you are enjoying this role, no need to worry about any yogas or anything. It's just fine. You're just fine. It's like they say, as long as you're in the merry-go-round, enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. But if at any point it becomes a sorrow-go-round, if at any point you find, okay, this drama is now, I'm not enjoying the drama anymore, the good news is that don't feel that you're stuck here. Don't feel that you don't have a choice. At any point you have a choice to just wash off your makeup and say, I'm not going to play this role anymore, and become the Atman again. So that is what Jnana Yoga asks us to do. That if you are completely satisfied and happy with your present situation, you don't need to do anything. Just enjoy, have a good time. But if at any point you find, no, this is not as perfect as I thought it would be, that things could be better. Well, if you're not happy with it, then there is a way out. Those of you who well, I guess most of you must have seen the movie Godfather. Well, it's one of the classical. How many of you have not seen it? Really? Oh, okay. Okay, so see, well, anyway, for those of you who have seen it, so there is I think it's involved in the third part of it. There is this, this Michael Corleone. He's trying to kind of come out of his mafia history. You know, he's a part of the mafia family. He wants to give it up, want to become legal and legitimate and become respected in society again. But we see that how often the efforts he makes doesn't succeed. And there is this one scene in which he says, every time I try to get out, they just kind of suck me back in. It's one of the very, I found that a very moving part of the movie. Because it's so true about spiritual life. Because those of us who are spiritual seekers, when you read these books and you listen to lectures, you go to retreats, you say, you are the Atman, you are the infinite being, you are a child of God, you are a devotee, and it's kind of, it's uplifting. And then we feel like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And then you kind of go to your workplace and in no time just kind of suck back into that whole politics, the family politics and relatives and workplace, and then you just come say, oh, now let me go and attend some retreat. And then again you kind of feel something and then you go out again and you kind of again suck back into it. So it's kind of a constant tug of war. So that's what makes spiritual life a challenge, is that why is it becomes so easy to think of God, to pray, to meditate in say when you go to a place of worship, when you come to a Vedanta center, when you go to a temple. Why is it easier to do it? When you're part of a, thing is this, in spiritual life we need support. Support is always helpful. Now, for instance, think about it this way. When we go to a place of worship, now if we have the identity here that we are devotees of God, we are spiritual seekers, there is a greater chance that as long as you are here in this environment, whether you are listening, singing, talking, eating, whatever that we do at the Vedanta Center, the chances are that we look upon each other as fellow devotees, as fellow spiritual seekers. And that helps. If people around me see me as a spiritual seeker, it helps to reinforce my own perception of myself as a spiritual seeker. And it's very helpful. Now we don't get that support when we go out. When you go out, other people are not going to see you as a spiritual seeker. I mean, those who know you well probably might. But otherwise, in the general population, you have a very different identity. You go to your workplace, you got your workplace identity. Among your family and relatives, you are an uncle or a mother or a nephew or a niece or a son or a daughter. That's a different identity. And so people then see you and address you based on that specific identity. Now the challenge is, for a spiritual seeker, no matter how other people see me, how other people relate to me, I must always relate with myself as a spiritual seeker, as a devotee, as a child of God, as an Atman. And to the extent I succeed in doing it, I'm able to see others as well. But in a protected environment like this, it becomes easier. And that's why I would strongly recommend that at least whenever you come for the programs at a Vedanta Center, make an effort to see even others here as fellow devotees, as fellow spiritual seekers, as Atman, or whichever way that comes naturally to you. Because in doing that, you are helping them, and to the extent you are helping them, you are also helping yourself. Because this is the way to kind of reinforce, renew our own self-identity, our spiritual identity, so that even then when we go out into the world, that something of this will stick, that it won't remain that we are spiritual, or when we are in a spiritual place, then when I go on a worldly place, I become worldly again. They say, Ganga tat pe Ganga Ram, Jamna tat pe Jamna Ram. So that doesn't help. So that's why spirituality is not like a once a week thing. That only when I go to a temple, I'm very, very spiritual, and then when I come out, and then I can be my some other self again. That's kind of a spiritual schizophrenia, that then I'm being spiritual one place and secular in another place. That doesn't help. So then one, to kind of just make it a little bit more concrete, would be, what would a Jnana Yogi do? A good way to do would be, first of all, what I heard from my own guru, the thing that he used to recommend was, what we see and what we think and what we do the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night is very, very important. And so one of the helpful practices is, if you want to take up spiritual life as a serious endeavor, then just by your bedside, keep some picture, either of your Ishta or anything that reminds you of your spiritual ideal. So that before you switch off your light at night, the last thing your eyes should see should be something that reminds you of your spiritual ideal. And who knows, God forbid, that might be the last thing you see in this life, because a lot of people do pass away in their sleep. So the last thing that my eyes see before I go to sleep, let it be something connected with my spiritual life. Again, and as you close your eyes and you wait for that sleep to come, maybe just repeat your mantra silently. So with that, if you kind of slowly glide into sleep, so the last thought the mind thinks could be also related to God, the last thing the eyes see. And the chances are that when you wake up in the morning, when you're still lying in your bed, you just wake up with a little bit of practice, if possible, that the first thought should be again of God. Maybe again, in the same lying down posture, as soon as you awake, just mentally repeat your mantra. That is one of the best ways to wake up. Rather than, oh my God, I'm late. That's not a very happy way to wake up. It's like just quietly, gently, first thing, just repeat your mantra. Again, if you have this picture by your bedside, then again, as you open your eyes, let the first thing that you see. It's a wonderful way. And now these are small things, but it's very, very helpful. They are very powerful practices. So as a Jnana Yogi then, that would be a good way to begin the day. Begin the day, if you have already received initiation, then the mantra that your guru has given you, begin with repeating that mantra. See the picture of your Ishta by your bedside. Also, it's good for a spiritual seeker to have, we know we have several identities, and depending on the context, all of us, clearly, we are either son, daughter, father, mother, husband, wife. So we have all these identities. At work, there is workplace identities. Then, of course, if you are politically active, then you have a political identification also, whether a Democrat or a Republican, and so on. So we have many simultaneous identities. Now, when can I truly say that I'm a spiritual seeker? Because it's a very slippery term. Someone who kind of occasionally once a year goes and attends some puja, goes for Durga Puja. Oh, I'm a great devotee and do Durga Puja. But that may be only once a year I might ever be doing anything related to puja. Again, but someone may be just doing practice every day, morning and evening, and they are also spiritual seekers. So again, it's a very wide spectrum. But truly speaking, when can I say I'm a devotee of God? I'm a spiritual seeker. And that would be when that becomes my dominant identity. It's a little bit like, think about it this way. Now many people have more than one credit cards, let's say. But generally you will find, eventually, you may not use all the cards that you have equally. Eventually you kind of then gravitate towards one card, which probably gives you some better benefits. So you might tend to use that one card more than the other cards. So then you could say, well, that's the dominant card among all the cards that you have. And similarly, all these different identities that we carry in our life, which is the dominant identity? Like someone, for instance, if someone is a very political junkie, now that person also has many identities, but if that person, if politics is all that person thinks about, then maybe that person can never forget, I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican. Even if that person meets other friends, the first thought is this person a Democrat or a Republican? So now that would be an authentically dominant political identity, because that's what this person is thinking about all the time. So that identity seems to come more often in the upper and the conscious part. Now when can I say I'm a spiritual seeker? And that would be when, among all the different identities I carry, this identity, this awareness that I'm a spiritual seeker, I seek the truth, I seek God, or I'm a devotee of God. How often in the course of a day, and you don't have to go on announcing it to anyone, just your own it's like, oh, I'm a devotee, you don't have to say that. But just in your heart, you see that I'm primarily a seeker of truth. I'm a spiritual seeker. If we find that awareness, that identity comes in our mind more often than, oh, I'm a boss, or I'm this, or I'm that, then we can say we are spiritual seekers. So then the goal is to make the spiritual identity of a dominant identity. That doesn't mean other identities are going to go away. They will all be there. You still will have the other identities, but this will be the defining, the prominent identity. So we can begin the day that way. Try then, if you see yourself as a devotee of God, if you see yourself as a spirit in Jnana Yoga context, try to see how long you can maintain that. Even before you get down from the bed, you say, I'm not going to forget that I'm a devotee. I'm not going to forget that I'm the Atman. Again, I'm just giving ideas. You feel free to choose whatever identity you like or you feel comfortable with. Then whatever you do after that, you go to the bathroom, you then brush your teeth, you take a shower, but everything at the back of your mind should be this identity. Well, I'm a devotee now taking a shower. I'm a devotee now brushing my teeth. This sounds odd the way I'm saying it, but it's possible to maintain that awareness. It's a little bit like when you have a headache, for instance. When you have a headache, we know, no matter how good a medication you might have, no headache disappears immediately. It takes a little while. Even if you take medication, the headache slowly might disappear. Now, just because you have a headache, you don't just sit in a corner doing nothing. But some people do. But most people say, well, I have other things to do. So you continue doing the things that need to be done, while all the time being aware of your headache. So if it's possible for me to do my regular duties and carry out my responsibilities while being aware of the headache, it should not be difficult then to carry out the same duties and responsibilities, being aware that I am the Atman. I'm aware, so you cannot say it's like, oh, if I think I'm the Atman, how can I go about doing my thing? Of course you can do. If I can do it with a headache, I can do it with an Atman ache also. Well, it's not even really an ache, really. So that argument doesn't work, that, oh, if I all the time think of God, because I have heard people say that. All the time I think of God, then when I will do? I've got so many other things to do. So thinking of your spiritual identity does not conflict with whatever duties and responsibilities you have in life. So that's something that we can do. And if you have a spiritual practice given by your guru, then that would be a good time after before you begin your major activity of the day, to do your prayer, your meditation, because that helps to truly stabilize one's mind, bring about a calmness, and then throughout the day, as often as you can, try not to forget that you are the Atman. Now, in the beginning, maybe you'll forget after 5 minutes. Now, doesn't matter. As soon as you remember, I had decided to remember it and I forgot. Don't get too upset. Once again, bring your mind to being that. Again, you will forget it. Once again, this has to be done with great perseverance. No matter how often you forget, you need to again remind yourself. And gradually, if you don't give up, if you keep on practicing this way, you will find that you will tend to forget less. You'll find that once you remember, you'll be able to remember it for a longer time. Same thing again in the evening when you come. Once again, do your regular spiritual practice. Try to remember all these things, and again before going to bed, you do this. Now, if you have copies of the book that and you find in one section of the book, then I've also given a few ways we can try to remember the identity. Some people find it easy to just repeat their mantra whenever they find, even if it's for a few seconds every day. There is a gap, then you begin some new work. Between that, just remember God mentally. That's one way to do it. But you can also find your own ways of remembering. For instance, when you're driving. And usually if you stop at a red light, people usually tend to get irritated. Like, you're like delayed again. So people. Now, it's just a law of association. If you look at the red light, and let's say if you are a worshipper of the goddess, of the Devi, now a red light can remember you of the bindi. You say, that's the bindi on Ma Durga or Ma Kali or something. So once you kind of make that mental association, then every time you look at the red light, you have found a way to remember God. In fact, you might start enjoying it so much, you'll be looking forward to a red light. So just a way of associating. You will wake up in the morning and you're sitting by the window, and then this beautiful sunlight coming in. And as you feel, you just need a creative imagination. So as you find some rays of sun over your body, and sometimes it can be very gentle or a gentle breeze, and you can feel, this is now the Divine Mother or Holy Mother coming and gently patting me. So every time you feel that breeze, you know that it's Mother come. Again, we need a little bit of creativity to be able to associate these apparently ordinary experiences of daily life and somehow connect them with our spiritual life. And that's the way we can prevent this self-forgetfulness. This is the way we can be reminded of the ideal again and again and again. And then also then on special occasions, maybe once a week or once a month, depending on your level of interest and the time available to you, you can undertake some deeper exploration. And that we don't have time, of course, to go through it, but I've described it to some extent in the book, which sometimes they say in Sanskrit, Panchakosha Vivarana. So looking deeply inside and looking at, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this ego, something that Nirvana Shatkam, that hymn says it. Or there's another way, there's a text called Drik Drishya Viveka. We discussed about the subject-object relationships. So there are different methods given in the books. We can do it. It may not be possible to do it every day, but at least occasionally a student of Jnana Yoga then can be used to, because those are also very helpful practices. Finally, just two things I will say, and then I will conclude. One is about the analogy of the wave and the ocean. Swami Vivekananda once said, look at the wave, look at the ocean and not the waves. So it's possible for us to look upon, and I briefly referred to it yesterday, that our body, a physical body, even physically we are really connected, physically we are one, because we might think that we are different beings, and we are in some way, but there is no really vacuum in between. There are these all material particles of which my body is made. There are material particles of which your body is made. But then there are this air which separates us in the middle. But this is also made of material particles. So this entire physical universe can be seen as one big ocean of matter. And every body is like one section of these material particles, because it seems to have a specific form and seems the particles seem to be held together by some force we call prana or life, and then we say, well, this is one being. But essentially, every one of us is like one little wave. Every body is one little wave in this ocean, material ocean. And just as the waves that we see in the ocean are continually exchanging water, the water in a wave never remains constant. So similarly, the material particles within us don't remain constant either. Through the food that we eat, we are already kind of adding material particles to it. Through the food, through the stuff that the body eliminates, and the material particles are going out of the body. So this is just like a wave. So remembering this also helps us remove this distinction of people being different. We see that this is one big ocean. Now this idea of oneness is true not only at the spiritual level, in some sense it's true at the physical level as well. If it's possible for us to see the material universe as one big ocean, then we can see even the mind. We speak about the cosmic mind. The mind being an abode of a container of thoughts, emotions, feelings. Now all of these thoughts, emotions, feelings in this entire universe can be seen just as a big ocean of ideas and thoughts and feelings. And when these are kind of get localized in one part, I say, well, this is my mind, this is your mind, this is your mind. But again, as we exchange the materials with the rest of the universe, we are also exchanging thoughts and ideas and feelings. So even this idea, this is my idea, this is my, there is nothing mine, because this is all belongs to the entire ocean. And similarly, this Atman, which is somehow gotten identified with this body and mind, then I can speak about it as my Atman and your Atman. But really, Atman is really infinite. So the Atman is itself one big ocean. The deluded Atman, which is connected or attached to one body and mind, become the Jivatma. And then this whole ocean becomes the Paramatma. So it's possible to look upon our entire human experience not being localized to just one body and one mind or one spirit, but just being part of a much larger whole. And then I will conclude with one story for which, with which I'm sure most of you are familiar, the story of a lost prince. So here was this one prince who was abandoned, who was actually kidnapped when he was a little baby and left inside a forest. And luckily, this baby was discovered by one tribal couple in that forest who were hunters, and they didn't have a child of their own, so they raised this baby as their own. Now when the king became old, and they had made a lot of search parties for the lost prince, and they never had found him. But 20 years passed this way, and the king passed away, and the king's people again went out in search, making one last ditch effort to find the successor. And then they found this young man inside that forest, and through a birthmark they were able to identify that this was in fact the kidnapped prince, the baby who was kidnapped 20 years ago. And they asked that parent, and the parents then they finally confessed and said, yeah, he's not really our child, we found him abandoned and we have raised him as our own. And then they said, well, we have got to take him now because he's really the prince. Now, so then this prince comes back, and then his is put on the throne. Now, this young man did not know he was a prince until he was told by these people. Now, even when he didn't know he was a prince, well, he was a prince. He didn't stop being a prince. He just didn't know it. Now, what must have been his state of mind when he was told that, oh, you're no longer a tribal, you're really a prince? Now, that was like sudden change of identity. Must have been shocking. And he also probably would have needed training after going back, like how he should act and move and talk like a prince. And that may not have been very easy for him. That's more or less the story, our story of life. We are all that kidnapped prince. We are all the Atman, and somehow we are kidnapped at some point, abandoned to the forest of this world, and told that we are human beings. And now, again and again, this Upanishad in the Gita, and all the teachers come and say, no, you are the Atman, you are the Atman. No, I'm a human being. And so, we need to practice now being the Atman. We are not becoming the Atman, we are already the Atman. Even when we think we are human, we are divine. It's just that we need to practice being divine. One of our Swamis in the 1950s, I was in a monastery in San Francisco. So he asked Swami Ashokananda once. He said he had been already being a monk for 5 years, and then he asked Swami Ashokananda, because 5 years had passed, and he discovered, I have not yet become enlightened. And so he goes to Swami Ashokananda, who was his teacher, and said, what more do I need to do in order to become enlightened? And then the Swami said, well, what are you waiting for? Why don't you start living as if you are already enlightened? Now that's a very, very profound teaching. Because we have an idea. Every one of us hopefully has some idea. Those of us who say, well, I want to become enlightened, I want to realize God. So what is our idea? What do we think will happen when you get God realization, when you become enlightened? What do you think will happen? So whatever your idea is, that when I become enlightened, this is how I will be, this is how I will do. And what this teaching says is, why do you want to wait until that time to do? Why don't you start doing it right now, what you would do then? Now that's not going to be easy, of course. For an enlightened being to do enlightened stuff is easy. For an unenlightened being to do enlightened work is not easy. Well, for that tribal young man to be a prince was not easy either. You need practice, right? So, we may fail, but we can try to do with effort what an enlightened being will do effortlessly. And if we can say, if as spiritual seekers, if you can live even say for 5 minutes of your life as an enlightened being, but you're already kind of part-time enlightened. You're enlightened for 5 minutes, which is good. No, but it's not easy. I mean, it might seem like, 5 minutes I can do it. No. It'll be even 30 seconds. To live like an enlightened being for 30 seconds may not be so easy. But if you can do it, if you can live like an enlightened being for 1 minute, there is hope. If you can do it for 1 minute now, maybe with a little bit of practice, after a week or a month, you might be able to do it for maybe 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And you keep on. And let me try to live like an enlightened being. Maybe after you can do it for 5 minutes and 10 minutes. A time will come when you can do it for 24 hours and 7 days a week. Well, then you find, I've already become enlightened. Because if you're able to do it all the time and effortlessly, well, you are already enlightened. So what most of us are looking for are a miracle. Like suddenly Thakur and Mother will come and zoom, everything's finished. And it could happen, of course. Nothing is impossible. Through their grace, anything can happen. But until that miracle happens, don't just sit there doing nothing. So till that time, let's start being at least temporarily enlightened. So let's make an effort to say, let me see. Wake up in the morning, how long I can manage being an enlightened being. And day after day after day, if we do that, we will eventually succeed. So this is a big subject, and we could cover only a few important points during these 2 or 3 days. So I would encourage you to read Swami Vivekananda's book, Jnana Yoga. They find lots of ideas, and the important thing is, as Swamiji said, an ounce of practice is worth 100,000 tons or whatever of theory. So what you read and what you study will remain with you only as long as you remember it. It has a very limited shelf life. But what you actually practice in daily life, even if it is very little, if you practice and whatever you experience, that becomes yours forever. So study is important, understanding is important, but understanding itself is not enlightenment. Ultimately, it all boils down to the quality of our life. We all know being truthful and honest is very good, a good idea, but simply having that idea is not enough. What will make difference is in my daily life, how honest I am, how truthful I am, how authentic a life I am able to lead. Because that kind of daily practice is what will bring about a real transformation in our lives. So if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, well, we can discuss in the few minutes remaining.
I'm sorry, I'm asking the question again. In the first part of the talk, you mentioned about the mind, and you said the mind should be pure, clear, and beautiful for us to achieve enlightenment. So my thought also is about we live in society. The society has a lot of influence on us, and many times influence is good, many times it's not what we would want it to be. So 1960s are different from what we have seen in 2017. We have very, very different distractions now. So one way of keeping our mind pure, clear, and beautiful would be to have a filter around us, so that when we absorb things from very, very different things, we absorb the good things only. And another thing would be to strive, at least, as you said, if we are in a gathering of in the ashram of where all our devotees, it becomes easier for us. So another thing would be for us to try to make our immediate surroundings at least a bit better. How would you suggest that we strive to achieve a balance between both of these?
No need to balance. Just you actually answered your own question. You need to have that filter, firewall. Yes, because you need to be connected to the world. You need access to the internet. There are a lot of wonderful things there, but you don't want viruses to enter your computer. So you have a firewall. Well, build that firewall within you so that you can learn or get the benefit of all the positive, healthy things that the world has to offer you, but don't allow the other stuff to enter. So that's essentially what it is. And that's what discernment means, that allowing only good things to go in and stopping the bad things from going in. Discernment, which we discussed yesterday when you were not here.
Thank you very much, Swami.
Yeah.
When you were talking about what a Gyan Yogi should do, you briefly mentioned a deeper exploration once a week or once a month. Could you elaborate on that?
I would love to, but there isn't much time because it's a big subject. But I hate to recommend my own book. but really, I mean, just to kind of considering the paucity of time, there is a section on it in which I have. It's still very brief in that one, but you'll have a better idea about. As I briefly mentioned even today, that it needs about the different layers on our personality called the 5 koshas, of how we can look deeply and say, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, this intellect, the ego, looking deeply at every part of my personality which I see as my own now, and seeing that they are not really me, they are only coverings, while the real me is the spirit. So those would be the kind of inner explorations that we need to do. Yeah, it's a big subject, but I think worth exploring.
My question is, we listen to the talks and everything, and we understand, and be truthful and honest, and considering everybody as, Atma. But is there something like there are things that are beyond our control? Like sometimes how, even we have that, but we still get angry. Like something small thing happens, you get irritated. And I can get irritated with my husband for every little thing. So so is there something, and that you should not be doing this? Is there something that is beyond our control?
No, it's not beyond our control. We just need to regain the control that we have lost. So it is very much within our control, but we need to work to gain it.
So I was thinking that the karma yoga, that from past experiences, like what we did in our past lives, they say that's nothing like that.
Well,
we are saying
karma determines your experience. Karma doesn't determine your action. So it is within your control if you want to get it back. Yeah. So you can't blame it on karma.
I get it back afterwards. I repent. I can do I repent about it.
Yeah, but if you do it right the first time, you'll have less need to repent.
Yeah, that was basically my question. It just comes out without thinking.
Yeah, so you should start thinking.
Okay, so it is not that I still have to have control over that. It's
absolutely.
So okay, yeah. Thank you.
Welcome.
Swamiji, how to practice witness attitude during meditation? Because we identify with everything. So witnesshood is the real key. And how to practice? What should we pay attention to?
Well, just be the witness. Don't react. Just see. What the witness is supposed to just see. So be a camera. There is a Christopher Isherwood's one novel, I think, which became a movie afterward, was being a camera. So it's like this. Now, if there were a camera next to me here, the camera would see what I'm seeing exactly. But when I see, I'm also reacting to what I'm seeing. A camera will never react. So in that sense, the camera is a better witness than I am. So seeing everything without reacting, that would be what a true witness would do.
So don't judge anything.
Yeah, but by judging you are reacting. Yeah.
Swamiji, a general question. This is about conversion. The Hindus, they get converted so easily for the purpose of marriage or to eradicate their illness to other religions. But what about the other religion people? They are not very easily converted to Hinduism. So my question is, do we lack any determination? Are we infatuated or are we weak-minded?
Do we lack any?
No, are we weak-minded? Because they get converted to other religions. But the other religion people, they are very determined. They never get converted to our religion very easily.
I don't think our religion, are we even trying?
No, they have seen so many examples, no doubt. That's what I mean.
What does it matter?
Look, my question is, are we weak-minded or are we not determined? That's what I'm asking.
I think it's very difficult to generalize like that. Who are these we? Yeah, I think I really don't worry too much about it. I just say wherever we find meaning and truth, we should feel free to accept it. So, if some people are able to find meaning about their own life, the purpose and everything in a certain tradition, and that resonates with their head and heart, and if it helps them become a better human being, let them be. It's not a political game about which numbers are becoming big or small. I mean, I think that might have value in certain contexts, but I, from a spiritual standpoint, I really don't care. What is important is that, first of all, we should become better human beings in every way. And whatever helps us to achieve that should be fine. I mean, after all these are just, I mean, at some point, these are only labels. You just put a label, a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian. Beyond labels, what does it really mean? It's possible to have the label Hindus and not live by Hindu principles at all. Someone else may not have that label and they might be better Hindus than others. So I don't think it really matters too much.
Thank you.
How do you practice fearlessness?
How do you practice?
Fearlessness.
By not being afraid of anything. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. I think one way would be to ask, why am I afraid of something? And find out. Because a lot of the fear that we have in life is irrational. Not everything, but a lot of it. And to some extent, the elders in the family are responsible for it. For instance, now, you don't want a child to go out in the dark. Well, you can, and then the easiest way is like, don't go in the dark. Dark, there is a demon or a Rakshasa or something like that. And then, of course, the child is afraid, and then your job is done. You feel happy now that. Now, the problem is we don't realize the very subtle harm that has been done at that age. Because even when we grow up, we have this kind of an instinctive fear of dark. And fear of dark is because that some we have heard in this childhood, oh, there is something there. So if we can kind of not pass on this irrational to the next generation, that would be a real service. And dark is just one example. I mean, death. I mean, think about death. Why are we even afraid of death? Because no one has, we have experienced, if you believe in rebirth, we have experienced death in our previous life, but none of us remember our previous life. So death is like a totally new experience. And yet we are like afraid of death. But this instinctive fear of death also is largely very cultural. Because if we, for instance, I can understand there's some anxiety about death might still remain because it's such a big unknown. But even then, if from a young age we can bring up our children, telling them just as we pass from childhood to youth to middle age, just as these are stages of life, that death is another one stage of life. There is a way to share these deeper truths which generally tend to put fear in minds at a very young age and remove that fear. I'll tell you one example of this. This is a real life example in Bombay. I know in family. So there's this grandmother. So they have this. The grandfather passed away at home, and there was this. They had two grandchildren at home, and they were probably the older one was, I think, 5 or 6 years old, and the younger one was only barely 3 or 4 years old. And normally, as we do in India, the death in the family, the first thing they did was kind of take these children away and take them to the neighbor's home so they won't understand and they'll get confused and so on. So anyway, so the grandfather passed away, they took the body, they cremated the body, and so on. And afterwards, when that grandson, who was only 3 years old, comes back and finds grandfather missing. And so he kept on asking, well, where is grandpa gone? And then for some few days they said, oh, he's gone out to visit somewhere and he'll return. And the idea was after a few days, I might forget. But then, every now and then, it wasn't like he was asking every day. But after a few days again, well, when is Grandpa coming? So when this kind of went on for a couple of months, then the grandmother, who had been a teacher when she was younger for almost 40 years, so she felt, well, it's now at some point you have got to tell this child something. And so she said, she called him and made him sit and then said, Grandpa now is going to get another body. So she didn't use the word death. He's now going to get another body. And he completely understood. Well, we have a body. Well, you can get different clothes, you can get a new clothes, you can get a new body. So she said, you're going to get a new body. And then this grandson asked, he said, Grandma, will he be able to recognize me, or will I be able to recognize him? That's a natural question, obviously. And she said, no. She said, he's become a baby again. That's what she said. So she told him, grandfather now has become a baby again. And because this child has seen other babies, he could understand, oh yeah, that makes sense. Then he said, but will I be able to recognize when I look at that baby that this is my grandfather? And will he be able to recognize me? And then she said, no. Just as when you write something on a board and you wipe it out, and then you don't know what is on it. Similarly, God has now wiped his mind clean. So you can't see him, you can't recognize him, he can't recognize you. Again, the child understood perfectly. Now I just give this as an example to show that sometimes we don't want to talk about these things, but there is a way, even some of these basic realities of life can be shared with the younger generation. If we can share it in a way as not to instill fear, they will grow up to be truly fearless. Of course, the grandmother said that up to this point the boy had understood completely well, but she was not prepared for the boy's next question. Because the next thing the little boy asked her was, Grandma, when will you become a baby again? Now think about it this way. How many of you remember the gifts that you got when you were little babies from your parents or your family? Very few of us will remember every little gift that you got. But oftentimes as we grow older, there will be occasions, and there must have already been occasions in your life when you suddenly remember, oh, this is what my mother used to tell me. This is what my dad used to do it. You see? So these things that later on in life we find benefit from seeing our parents or grandparents do things in a certain way, or some of the important things that we heard from them. These are the things remain with us all through life. These are the things we will remember. These are the things that we'll find truly benefited by. But all these little birthday gifts that we got, toys, etc., we don't remember them at all. Now I'm not saying don't give those gifts to your children. By all means, give it to them. But remember, even when you give those gifts, they are not going to remember them. What they will remember is some of these important life beneficial tips that they hear from you, and actually more than hearing from you, actually see how you are living yourself. That the greatest gifts that as parents and grandparents we can give to the younger generation is these things. The gift of our own life, of our own example, of our own very practical experiences, sharing with them. That is what will make the new generation fearless. The problem in life is not learning new things. Learning Jnana Yoga is easy. Jnana Yoga principles themselves are not difficult. Unlearning these irrational fears and these crazy ideas that have been put in our head, getting those crazy things out of the mind, that is more difficult. And so the simple solution is try to put less crazy ideas in the first place. So the child will have little less things to unlearn when they grow up. Yeah, so I think that's very important. In fact, there is a story of Madalasa, the Queen Madalasa in the Indian tradition. How that queen, right from the time, even the babies, when she was rocking the babies in the cradle, she would say, you are the infinite one, you are the pure one, And one by one, these babies who had been hearing about these truths from a very young age grew up and then became enlightened. So the greatest gift, if you want to show your love to your children or the younger members of your family, in addition to the gifts you give them the gift of your own life's example. So that is something they will remember all through life.
Swami, I have a small question, not a really question. I actually didn't get the name of the movie that you were talking to. That is the movie of silence.
Now, I think it was titled Into Great Silence.
Into Great Silence. In this connection,
I think you probably might find a DVD or something. I don't think you'll find it running in any theaters. It's not a very popular movie.
in this connection, what I want to ask is, you said that you want to watch that movie with a few friends.
Yeah.
They were all Tyagis, or some of them were.
They were all?
Or Tyagis like you?
Tyagi.
Tyagi.
Yes.
I mean, sannyasis?
No.
Not all of them.
Yeah.
So in this connection, then I would like to ask: did your friends did they have the same feeling that you had about this silence movie?
I would think. I mean, what feelings they had? Yeah, but they all also liked it. I don't know what feelings they had. No, I can tell you only what feelings I had.
That was my question in this connection.
Yeah.
And in course of your proceedings of this lecture, you mentioned one Bengali saying that is "Mon Mukh Ek Karo." Mon Mukh Ek Karo. In this connection, I would like to quote one sloka from Rigveda. That is like that: "Bam me manasi pratisthita, mano me vachi pratishthitam." It accidentally I came across this sloka. It is in Rika Veda.
Yeah.
So the meaning is the same.
Yeah, it comes very close to that. Yeah.
Close to that.
Yeah.
And the third point that I would like to appreciate, or rather, I shouldn't say I should thank you, but
No, you can thank me if you want.
it's like that in the course of the proceedings, most of the time you give examples from mundane plane instead of the plane that where you belong most of the time, I should say at least. Instead of that, you cited examples from mundane plane. Is that because that will touch our hearts?
No, I didn't calculate all that. What came to my mind, I just said it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Swamiji, I didn't get this when you answered my question about the witnesshood. You said you mentioned the movie by Christopher.
Christopher Isherwood.
But which was the movie?
Well, I don't know what the movie was titled. I think the book was titled "I am a Camera" or something.
I am a camera. Oh.
Yeah, it's not a very spiritual book, so you don't have to. Just the idea was the camera.
Swamiji, if I ask briefly, so if I'm in the below average camp, I need to meditate because hearing and reflecting have not been sufficient. What to do to improve level of concentration? Because I think that is translating also into my level of identification and grabbing onto things in the physical world or the material world outside of my spiritual practice. I think that there's some link between the lack of concentration in the meditation and the ease with which I'm grabbed and absorbed and attached back into worldly affairs or my day-to-day. Like, is it just to reduce the length of time of meditation and try to have a better quality?
Well, I mean, if you have already received instructions from a teacher, then follow whatever instructions your teacher has given you.
But if I'm plateauing at a certain level and it does not seem to be improving.
No, that's what I'm saying. The whatever instructions you have received from your teacher, just follow them. And carrying out the instructions of your teacher with sincerity, regularity, and with devotion. Just, Swami Vivekananda used to say the 3 P's: purity, patience, and perseverance. So persevere and just keep on. At times it might look very monotonous, but don't stop anywhere. Just keep on doing. That's the way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you can please clarify about this witness. There is a question about don't be judgmental. But in day-to-day life, there are so many situations you need to be judgmental about situations or people. So if you can enlighten us how to get better in terms of being less.
No, that's fine. When you want to analyze and when you want to judge, you judge. Other times, be the witness. You can't do both at the same time.
Yes.
So no one is expecting that you immediately start being a witness 24 hours a day. So when you feel that judging and all those things are necessary, well, do them. And other time when it's, we are not like judging every moment.
Yeah.
So other time, be a witness. Then gradually you will see. Either you will start judging more or being a witness more. Something will happen. We just keep on doing it, yeah.
But in that course of analysis and judging, is it better to have a frame of reference for our...
Sure, I mean, thing is this. I mean, judging itself is not bad. I mean, discernment is in some sense, it is a kind of judging. You're judging whether something is good or bad, healthy or unhealthy, positive or negative. So long as our judging leads to a process of learning, you're learning something. You're not judging just in order to lay blame or judge in order to assign guilt to some people. That's the purpose, then it's not very helpful. But as long as you're judging what's happening around you in order for your own growth, in order for you to learn something, then I think that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Is there a difference between judging and analysis?
It depends. They could be probably, you are really analyzing what's happening. I think analysis is a part of judgment. You can judge something only after analyzing it. So they are not too different, I think. In a lot of these things, I think the intention is very important. So if your intention, even for that matter, even anger is often considered like bad. But sometimes if your intention is to help someone, and if being angry is the only way to bring about that, anger can be an instrument. So always I think the intention plays a role in that. So we are already overshot our time. So anyone wants to have a last word, a last laugh? Okay. So